The quiet night was shattered when I noticed her phone tucked away on the nightstand, its screen softly aglow in the darkness. I always trusted her, but something had changed. She guarded that device with an intensity that spoke of secrets too precious to share. In that fateful moment, curiosity, desperation, and a deep, unspoken fear collided inside me. Unable to sleep and desperate for answers, I waited until her gentle breathing signaled that she drifted into slumber. Then, with trembling hands and a heart pounding in dread, I took the phone and began to scroll. What I discovered in that silent, forbidden act broke my heart in ways I never imagined. I remember that night as if it were a vivid dream, a surreal blend of betrayal and disbelief. We'd been married for nearly 6 years, a time filled with shared laughter, whispered hopes in the dark, and plans for a future that I thought was built on absolute trust. In recent months, however, I had begun to notice subtle changes in her behavior. She had grown suddenly protective of her phone. Once, she would casually leave it on the coffee table while we talked, but lately it always stayed close at hand. At first, I rationalized it as nothing more than her desire for privacy, but the intensity of her newfound defensiveness gnawed at me. I started to wonder if there was something she was hiding, a truth too painful to confront. That night, as I lay awake in our dimly lit bedroom, I recalled every offhand comment, every furtive glance at her screen when she thought I wasn't watching. My mind was a turbulent sea of questions. Was it a secret conversation with an old friend? Or something far more sinister, an undisclosed romance that I had never imagined? I tossed and turned, haunted by the possibility that the woman I loved was concealing a part of herself from me. The vulnerability in my chest grew with each passing minute until it became unbearable. Finally, as the clock ticked past midnight and the only sounds in our home were the steady rhythm of her breathing and the soft hum of the refrigerator, I made the decision that would forever alter the course of our lives. I reached out with shaky fingers, lifted the phone from where it lay, and unlocked it with the password I knew by heart. Every second felt suspended as I began to navigate through her messages, each notification a small, relentless hammer striking at the edifice of trust one had built. At first, I skimmed through mundane texts, messages from her friends about weekend plans, reminders from her work calendar, and a few light-hearted jokes that once brought a smile to my face. But then, hidden beneath a folder labeled personal, I found a conversation that sent a jolt of icy terror through me. The dialogue was intimate, filled with words that spoke of longing and familiarity, a language I had never heard her use with me. I read every word, my eyes stinging with a mixture of disbelief and heartbreak. The messages revealed flirtatious exchanges, secret meetings, and even plans for a getaway that did not include me. Each line was a piercing reminder that the love I thought we shared was, in fact, divided between two worlds. My heart pounded in my ears as I scrolled, each new message driving a spike of pain deeper into me. I couldn't tear my eyes away, even as tears blurred my vision. The conversation was with someone whose name I didn't recognize, a stranger who had become so dangerously familiar to her that he occupied an entire digital space on her phone. I felt the sting of betrayal wash over me in waves. How had I not seen it coming? Every shared smile, every quiet reassurance that I had taken for granted now felt like a lie. I remembered the times she had been unusually secretive, the times when her eyes darted away when I entered the room, and every subtle cue that now screamed of deception. As I sat there in the oppressive silence of our bedroom, the reality of the situation began to settle in with a cold, harsh finality. I felt as if the ground had shifted beneath my feet, leaving me suspended in a world where nothing was as it seemed. The woman I loved, the one I thought was entirely mine, had been leading a double life, a life filled with secrets that she had locked away behind a screen. I was overwhelmed by a sense of loneliness so profound that it echoed in every corner of my heart. In that long, agonizing moment, I wrestled with a torrent of emotions, anger at her betrayal, sorrow for the loss of trust, and an aching emptiness that seemed to swallow me whole. I didn't know what to do with the phone, or even how to begin piecing together the shattered fragments of our life. All I knew was that the truth was now laid bare before me, and it was a truth I wasn't ready to accept. I gently closed the messaging app, my hands still trembling, and placed the phone back on the nightstand as if trying to hide the evidence of what I had seen. But the damage was irrevocable. That quiet, devastating act of discovery marked the beginning of a slow, painful descent into a reality I had never wished to face. I sat there for hours in the darkness, my mind replaying every word, every tender moment that now seemed tainted by the bitter taste of betrayal. I felt as if my heart were slowly cracking open, each beat a reminder that the love we had shared was now forever altered by secrets I could no longer ignore. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I lay awake in a haze of sorrow and confusion, my thoughts spiraling into memories of our early days together. the laughter, the spontaneous adventures, the dreams we had woven into the fabric of our shared life. I clung to those memories even as the present seemed to unravel them thread by fragile thread. I knew that the coming morning would force me to confront a choice, to stay and demand the truth, or to walk away from a relationship built on illusions. By the time the first rays of dawn crept through the curtains, I made my decision. I couldn't live a lie. The pain of knowing that she had hidden such a significant part of her life from me was a wound too deep to heal without honesty. With a heavy heart and a resolve forged in sorrow, I resolved that I would wait for her to wake, and then, in that raw morning light, I would confront her with what I had seen. I needed to hear her side of the story, if there was any story left to tell. And even if it meant shattering the fragile remnants of our love, I knew I had to face the truth. When the first soft light of morning broke through our bedroom curtains, I knew the time for silence was over. I waited in the stillness of the living room, the phone resting on the coffee table like a dangerous secret, each tick of the clock echoing the turmoil in my chest. The room was unnervingly quiet, as if it, too, was bracing for the inevitable confrontation. I replayed every moment from last night in my mind, the clandestine act of checking her phone, the shocking discovery that now threatened to shatter the world I thought we shared. I had resolved then to confront her as soon as she awoke, and now, as her gentle footsteps approached the hall, my heart pounded with a mixture of dread and desperate hope. She emerged from the bedroom, wrapped in a soft robe, her hair still damp from sleep. For a fleeting second, our eyes met, hesitant, searching, laden with unspoken questions. "Good morning," she murmured, her voice betraying nothing of the tension that simmered beneath the surface. I managed a nod, swallowing hard as I steeled myself for what I had to say. "Sarah, we need to talk," I said, my voice low but resolute, as I led her into the small, sunlit kitchen. The morning light made the room feel both intimate and starkly honest, a perfect stage for truths to emerge. I gestured to the coffee table, where the phone lay untouched, its screen dark now, but the memory of its revelation still vivid in my mind. She hesitated, her eyes flickering to the device. "What about it?" she asked cautiously, a trace of apprehension weaving into her tone. I took a deep breath, summoning the courage to voice the words that had been tormenting me all night. "Last night, while you were asleep," I began, struggling to keep my voice steady, "I checked your phone." The silence that followed was heavy and unbearable. I could feel the heat of embarrassment and betrayal rising in my cheeks as I continued. "I found messages, conversations that I wasn't a part of." I paused, as if the truth itself demanded a moment of reflection. "They weren't just casual texts, they were intimate, Sarah. I saw things that made me wonder who you were really talking to." Her eyes widened, and for a few excruciating seconds, she said nothing. The air between us grew thick with tension, each second stretching longer than the last. Finally, she whispered, I'm sorry." But her apology was thin, as if it were rehearsed, lacking the depth that I needed to hear. I pressed on, my voice trembling with raw emotion. "Who is it, Sarah? Who are you talking to? The messages, they mention someone with initials. They talk about meeting, about sharing secrets and moments you didn't share with me. I don't understand." My throat tightened as I searched her face for any sign of truth or deception. Tears welled in her eyes as she lowered her gaze. "Mark, I never meant for you to find out this way," she said, her voice cracking. "I was scared. I felt so exposed and vulnerable, and then, everything just became too overwhelming." Her words tumbled out in a rush, as if she were trying to confess a lifetime of hidden sorrow in a single breath. "It started as a harmless friendship. I never intended for it to go this far. I needed someone to talk to, someone who understood the things I couldn't share with you." My heart ached with both fury and despair. "Understand? Sarah, I've always been here for you. I've listened to your worries, supported you through hard days. Why would you turn to someone else?" The questions poured out, each one laced with hurt and disbelief. She hesitated, wringing her hands as she searched for the right words. "I don't know," she finally admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "I felt alone. I felt like you were so wrapped up in work, in your own world, that I didn't have anyone to confide in. I know that's no excuse, and I'm sorry. I couldn't bear the thought of burdening you with all my darkness." I closed my eyes, trying to process the storm of emotions crashing over me. The revelation was not as simple as an affair with another lover. It was a confession of loneliness, of unmet needs that she had hidden behind a veneer of independence. But the betrayal was still there, cutting deep. "So, you lied, Sarah," I said, my voice cracking. "Not just about where you were, but about who you were with. You chose to keep this secret from me, even when I thought we were honest with each other. How can I ever trust you now? Her face contorted with regret as she reached out to me, her hand trembling in the air between us. Mark, please, I know I've hurt you, and I'm so sorry. I wish I could take it back, but I can't. All I can do is promise that I'll try to be honest from now on. I never wanted to hurt you. I was just so scared of being alone with my own thoughts that I sought solace somewhere else. Her voice broke as she continued, I know that's not enough. I know I betrayed your trust, and I don't know if you can ever forgive me. I stepped back, the weight of her words pressing down on me. The room felt smaller, the light dimmer, as if the very atmosphere were mourning the loss of our shared innocence. I need time, Sarah, I said slowly, the words feeling like an admission of defeat. I need time to understand what all this means, to figure out if there's any way for us to rebuild what's been broken. My voice was thick with unshed tears and the heavy burden of betrayal. She nodded, her eyes red and puffy. I understand, Mark. I truly do. I'll give you all the time you need. Please don't leave. I don't want to lose you. Her plea hung in the air, a fragile thread of hope amid the wreckage of trust. But deep inside, I felt the stirrings of a heartbreaking certainty, a realization that the foundations of our love had been irreparably shaken. I recalled the long nights when I'd sat alone, feeling the emptiness of a home that suddenly felt cold and distant, the countless times I'd wondered why you never seemed truly present even when we were together. Now, your absence wasn't just a fleeting feeling, it was etched into every word on your phone, every secret exchange that I had unearthed while you slept. For what felt like hours, we sat there in silence, the raw vulnerability of our confessions mingling with the unspoken question of whether our love could survive this betrayal. I struggled with the conflicting parts of my heart, the part that still loved you and the part that felt irreparably broken by the secrets you'd kept. I don't know if I can just pretend that nothing happened, I said finally, my voice low and full of pain. I need to figure out who we are now, after all these hidden conversations and unspoken truths. I need time to decide if I can ever trust you again. Tears fell from her eyes as she whispered, I understand. I'll do whatever it takes, Mark. I want to be honest. I want to help you heal, and I want to heal, too. Her words, though filled with remorse, could not mend the shattered pieces of trust that now lay scattered between us. I rose from the table and walked over to the window, staring out at the pale light of dawn filtering over our quiet street. My mind was a battlefield of memories, our shared laughter, our intimate moments of connection, and the subtle signs of distance that I had overlooked. I realized that the secret you kept was not just about another person, it was about you, about the part of you that you had hidden away out of fear and loneliness. And now, knowing that, I felt a grief so deep it threatened to drown me. Turning back to face you, I saw in your eyes a desperate plea for understanding, a hope that somehow, we could find our way back from this. But as I looked at you, I could no longer ignore the truth that was staring me in the face. The person I thought I knew was now a stranger with a hidden life, and that secret had forever changed the way I saw us. I need to leave for a while, I said quietly, my voice heavy with finality. I can't pretend I'm okay right now. I need to be alone, to think, to process all of this. I'm not sure what the future holds for us, Sarah, but right now, I need space. You nodded silently, your eyes filled with unspeakable sorrow as you whispered, I'm so sorry, Mark. And in that moment, I knew that nothing would ever be the same. The necklace of secrets, the hidden conversations, the quiet betrayals, they had carved a rift between us that I wasn't sure could ever be bridged. I gathered my thoughts, the weight of your confession still hanging in the air, and walked to the door without another word. As I stepped out into the cool, early morning, I felt the pain of our shattered trust with every step. The drive felt interminable as I navigated the quiet streets, my mind consumed by the echoes of your hidden truths and the question of whether I could ever truly forgive. That day marked the beginning of a long, uncertain journey, a journey where every moment of solitude forced me to confront the reality that love, no matter how cherished, sometimes carries scars that may never fully heal. I sat alone in a small cafe later, my journal open in front of me, and began to write down everything I felt, the betrayal, the sorrow, and the bitter hope that perhaps, with time, I might learn to trust again. As the hours passed and the sun climbed higher in the sky, I knew that the path ahead would be filled with difficult choices and raw emotions. I was left with the daunting task of reconciling the love I still felt for you with the overwhelming sense of betrayal that now defined our relationship. And so, with a heart heavy yet determined, I resolved to take this time alone, not just as an escape from the pain, but as an opportunity to rediscover who I am outside of the confines of our shared life. The moment I stepped away from our home that morning, I felt as if the weight of every hidden secret was lifting, yet a new burden, raw and jagged, settled in its place. I drove aimlessly along quiet roads, the landscape a blur of awakening light and endless possibility, while my mind replayed every detail of that painful night, the sight of her phone, the desperate act of checking it while she slept, and the discovery that shattered my heart into irreparable fragments. Every mile I traveled carried me further from the life I once knew, yet it also forced me to confront a truth I had long avoided, a truth that demanded healing, introspection, and the courage to rebuild my world without the lies that had bound us. I checked into a modest motel on the edge of town, a temporary refuge where I could let my thoughts run free. In the dim light of my room, I unpacked my emotions alongside a worn duffel bag, each item a reminder of the shared life that was now nothing more than memory. I sat on the edge of the bed, the silence wrapping around me like a shroud, and opened my journal. With each trembling word I wrote, I poured out the anguish of betrayal, the raw pain of discovering that the woman I loved had guarded her phone as if it were a secret vault, and that secret had left my heart shattered. I wrote about the sleepless night that followed, the torrents of tears, the questions that had no answers, and the overwhelming loneliness that had settled into the quiet corners of my soul. In the following days, I wandered the streets with no destination in mind. I found solace in the simple rhythms of life, the soft murmur of a local cafe, the steady rustle of leaves in a nearby park, the gentle hum of an early morning breeze. Each small moment was a step toward reclaiming myself, a reminder that even when a heart is broken, time has a way of nurturing new beginnings. I visited an old bookstore, one I had frequented in happier times, and lost myself among the stacks of faded paper and whispered stories of resilience. Here, amid the quiet wisdom of countless lives, I began to see that I was not defined solely by the betrayal I had endured, but by the capacity to rise, again and again, despite the scars. One crisp afternoon, as rain began to lace the windows with delicate patterns, I met with a counselor. In a warmly lit room filled with the soft murmur of empathetic voices, I began to untangle the web of confusion and hurt that had ensnared me. I talked about every small sign I had overlooked, the guarded glances, the hushed phone calls, the subtle ways she had distanced herself, and I learned that sometimes our fears can magnify our wounds, yet confronting them is the first step toward healing. I discovered that forgiveness, while not erasing the pain, could serve as a bridge to a future where trust was rebuilt on new, honest foundations. Slowly, the raw edges of betrayal began to soften. I returned to long-neglected hobbies, writing short stories, revisiting old music, even taking up photography to capture moments of beauty in the everyday. Each click of the shutter became a small victory over the darkness that had once threatened to consume me. I started taking walks along the river, where the steady flow of water reminded me that life, no matter how turbulent, always moves forward. In the quiet solitude of these moments, I realized that my journey was not about forgetting the past, but about learning from it and embracing the possibility of renewal. I reached out to old friends, those who had known me before the weight of secrets had smothered my spirit. Over cups of steaming coffee and quiet conversations in dimly lit cafes, I found that sharing my pain made it less isolating. Their support was a lifeline, a reminder that I was not alone, and that every person carries their own burdens. I began to see that healing was a mosaic of small, determined steps, each honest conversation, each gentle smile from a friend, and every moment of quiet reflection contributed to piecing my fractured heart back together. One evening, as the golden light of dusk filtered through the trees in a quiet park, I sat on a weathered bench and allowed myself to grieve for the love I had lost. The memory of her protective phone, the secret I had unearthed while she slept, still stung, but in that pain, I began to see the seeds of a new beginning. I acknowledged that the betrayal had irrevocably changed me, but it had also opened a doorway to a deeper understanding of who I was. I resolved that I would no longer let fear dictate my future. Instead, I would embrace my vulnerabilities, learn from my mistakes, and move forward with a newfound strength. Weeks turned into months, and slowly the barren landscape of my heart began to bloom with cautious hope. I enrolled in a creative writing class, channeling my turbulent emotions into poetry and prose. I learned to express the complex blend of sorrow and resilience through words, a cathartic exercise that allowed me to communicate with my own inner self. Each poem was a step toward reclaiming my identity, a testament to the fact that even in the aftermath of heartbreak, beauty could still be found. In time, I also began to explore the possibility of new relationships, connections forged not out of a desperate need to fill an aching void, but out of a mature desire to share life honestly. I met someone at a local art exhibit, a kind soul with eyes that held both warmth and the promise of understanding. Our conversations were gentle and unhurried, and although I was wary of opening up too soon, I found solace in knowing that I was capable of loving again. With each small, tentative step, I allowed the possibility of trust to take root once more, not as a naive gesture, but as a carefully nurtured commitment to honesty. Looking back now, as I sit in the soft glow of a quiet evening in my modest new apartment, I realize that the necklace, its engraved initials that once shattered my trust, has become a symbol of my transformation. It represents a painful chapter of my life that forced me to confront the truth and ultimately set me free. I've learned that betrayal, as devastating as it may be, can also be the catalyst for profound growth. The wounds will always be there, etched into my memory like delicate scars, but they no longer define me. Instead, they remind me of the strength I discovered when I was forced to face the truth head-on. I now understand that every ending carries within it the promise of a new beginning. The heartbreak I experienced, though excruciating, has paved the way for a future where honesty and vulnerability are cherished above all else. As I prepare to embrace this uncertain, yet hopeful future, I take with me the lessons learned from a love that was once shrouded in secrecy. I choose to move forward with a heart that is resilient, with eyes that are open to every nuance of life, and with the quiet knowledge that even the deepest wounds can eventually heal. In the gentle cadence of a new day, I stand ready to write the next chapter of my life, a chapter defined not by the betrayal of the past, but by the courage to live authentically, to love without fear, and to build a future rooted in truth. The journey is far from over, and I know there will be days when the pain resurfaces. But for now, as the sun dips below the horizon and paints the sky with hues of hope, I smile softly at the thought that I have the power to begin anew. My heart, though scarred, beats with a steady rhythm of resilience and renewal, a rhythm that promises a brighter tomorrow, where every ending gives way to the possibility of a new, honest, and beautiful beginning.